Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm Joe and this is Super Smash Gaming YT. In today's video we're doing something a little bit different, and in today's video I asked video game YouTubers when was the moment they started collecting video games and why, and you will be really interested to watch these videos because they are awesome and everybody's story is different. So this is the reason why I want to do it as well. I would like to take the time to thank everybody that was a part of this collaboration video because you are all awesome, and I can't wait for all of you guys to see everybody else's videos as well. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with myself and then we will carry on with everybody else. So I started collecting back when I was about 17 or 18, and I used to be a very PlayStation fangirl type of person back in the day. So I only used to really collect for the PlayStation 3 and then it was the PlayStation 4 I used to collect for as well. And I never really used to collect for anything else. And then it got to a point where I was getting older and I fell out of love with video games. I really did. And I didn't play video games for about 3 or 4 years. And then the Nintendo Switch came out, and obviously it came out with Breath of the Wild when it first was released. And this was the point where I started getting back into video gaming and really loving it. So the Switch brought me back to video gaming, which is why the Switch is one of my all-time favourite consoles, because if I hadn't started playing the Switch, then I don't think I would have got back into video games at all. So like I say, the Switch brought me back to video gaming, and honestly I really love playing Breath of the Wild and it made me so happy playing it. And then obviously with like lockdown and everything, I played a lot of Animal Crossing as well, which was really awesome as well. And then after that, I think I slowed down a little bit again, and then I started collecting again properly about 2.5 years ago, and since then I haven't looked back. Obviously the reason why I started collecting was because I just love video games. As you know, I love collecting video games, I love playing video games, I love my games room, it makes me really happy. And obviously, as I've gone on, I've enjoyed collecting more and more, and obviously you've seen that I've learned now what are actually my favourite consoles of all time are, and obviously I'm collecting for those in a minute, which is the Xbox 360 and the Nintendo Switch. But like I say, the reason why is it just makes me really happy. I love playing games, I love being able to share my games with you guys, and yeah, it just makes me really, really happy. So that is the reason why I started collecting video games. But yeah, so without further ado, let's get on to the next person. So take it away, Dave.
Hey, my name's Dave and I have a channel called Davechungus, collecting on a budget, talking about video games and toys and all kinds of cool stuff. And Joe has kindly asked me to be a part of this video, talking about what point in my life did I realise I wanted to collect games and consoles and why. So excuse the informal setting here, I'm just sitting on my couch. I've just filmed a video for my channel and I'm very sweaty. So I'd say when I first got into gaming, when my cousin gave me, well, he didn't give me, he lent me his Mega Drive, which I ended up keeping, with Sonic the Hedgehog, and that's just where I kind of fell in love with gaming. I had a game shop near my house that I could go to every couple of weeks and grab a new game if I traded in an old one and whatnot. But it wasn't until probably my early 20s, late teens, when I first got my first proper job, where I realised that I could earn my own money and I have free money and I can buy things, that I started buying everything. And I mean, I bought everything, those Panasonic Qs and bloody, yeah, imported games and everything. And yeah, I ended up selling a lot of that stuff in the end when kind of when life gets in the way. And now, being an old man in my 30s, I've decided that I'm going to focus my collection on the Xbox 360 because it's my favourite console. It is the console that's given me the best memories over the years. I had my teenage years, formed my teenage years through the Xbox 360. And yeah, that's what I collect for now, as well as toys and other random shit. But yeah, thanks again, Joe, for having me, and on to the next person, if I'm not. Bye.
Right, so hello, my name is John from JBCollects, and I've been asked from Joe from Super Smash Gaming, what was the moment that I knew I wanted to start collecting video games? It's a bit of a tricky one. I'm not sure there was an exact moment, but so I've always sort of dabbled in kind of like side hustles and things like that. And one of the things that I've always done is like eBay and sort of flipping from like car boot sales, charity shops and stuff like that. And even though I've always been into gaming, you know, ever since like my childhood, I remember all the way back to sort of like Spectrums, Commodores. That's where I sort of started off, because, you know, sadly I'm in my 40s. But and yeah, so it started to go to these sort of like car boot sales and charity shops, and I would come across these games and like old stuff that I remembered from like my childhood. You don't see it as much now, but when I was going back, you know, I don't know, many years ago, when I started going to car boots and that, I would always find like, you know, these little bits of nostalgia, which would, you know, sort of ignite that little, you know, nostalgia hit. And I would primarily be buying stuff which I would then flip on for profit. But then I started buying stuff and keeping stuff. And I started building up a little collection of things over the years. And then I thought, you know what? I mean, I'd already owned all these consoles, you know, at some point. Not all of them, but I'd owned a lot of these consoles, you know, not as a collector, you know, as a gamer, as a player. I'd owned a lot of them consoles. So I found myself basically rebuying them all again, as we all did, because, you know, we parted ways with our original ones, or, you know, I wasn't savvy enough to think, oh, these are going to be worth something, so I'll keep them. You know, I'd hate to think about all the stuff that I picked up for, you know, dirt cheap, and then sold on for next to nothing. You know what I mean? There's probably countless stories of that, and I'm sure I'm not alone in that. But yeah, so I guess it was just from a few years back, maybe, I don't know, five or 6 years ago maybe, where I started kind of picking stuff up. I've actually built a collection up and then sold the whole of it off before. That was a few years back, and I think about that collection now. You know, I had like Xbox Crystal, original Nintendo. There was so much good stuff in there, and I sold the whole lot in one big job lot, way undervalued compared to what it'd be worth now. And then I started collecting again, probably, like I say, about 5 or 6 years ago, and yeah, it's all gone from there really. And I guess now I'm at the point where I'm not just buying stuff at car boot sales. I'm doing what a lot of people do, and that's buying stuff, flipping stuff on, and then with the profits I make from that, I'll invest it into the collection. You know, so it sort of takes the pain off, because I'm not one of these people that's going to go out and spend like, you know, 400 quid on, you know, one game. However, I will flip a load of stuff in order to make that money, and then I'll, you know, buy it that way. So yeah, so that's me, John, JBCollects. Thanks very much for letting me in on this collab. Hope it goes well. Cheers.
What is up, YouTube? It is Wayne from Wayne's World of Gaming, and Joe from Super Smashing Gaming YT has asked me to come on here and explain when I decided, or I knew I wanted to collect video games. Now, my reply to this was, to be honest, I don't think I should be part of this video, as I feel a bit of a fraud, as I've not really been collecting them my whole life. It's not something I've always wanted to do. I'm relatively new to collecting video games, and I've only been doing it just over a year. But she said, that's nonsense, you know, you're a collector the same as all of us, so do the video and be part of the collab. So thank you for inviting me, Joe. I really appreciate it. Now, as for collecting, I don't really have an amazing story, unfortunately. I don't want to build something up that's just going to be a big letdown. So basically, I was out shopping with Laura. We was going around our usual haunts, and we come across an indoor market. And in that indoor market, I saw the original PlayStation console. Now, you all know I'm a PlayStation fanboy, and to see that there, which was a massive part of my childhood, absolutely blew me away. It was like 30 quid. And I said to Laura, oh, I'm so tempted to buy that. That is such a blast from the past. And her words to me, as always, if you want it, buy it. I didn't. I refrained. I was like, no, will I play it? Well, I doubt I ever will and whatnot. But it got me pondering, and I kept thinking I should have got that PlayStation. I should have got that PlayStation. And lo and behold, this was probably September time. That Christmas, I woke up to a PS1. So Laura bought me, it was the PS1, not the original PlayStation, but they do exactly the same thing with a variety of games. And it was great fun. It was a great blast from the past. But I still didn't really want to collect games at that point. I had the console and I could play a few games. I was happy with that. My cousin then started collecting consoles, so he was showing me all the different Nintendos and things he bought, and I was like, nah, I don't want to get into that. But it'd be cool to have a PlayStation 2. And then I got this little idea in my head that I want to get every PlayStation console, 1 to 5. Now, at this point, I already had a 5 and a 4, so I thought, well, let's just get the others, and I could put a display in my living room, and that'd be really cool, you know, like from history. Because I already had a Game Boy. I seen one of those on eBay for cheap, and I just bought it because I thought it'd look a cool display. No intention of playing it. It would just be a cool display. So I thought the PlayStations would be exactly the same. For instance, the first PS3 I bought didn't even work. It was just there for a display piece. And I just kind of started to get a little bit of a bug from there. So I got all the consoles, and then the biggest thing that hit me hard was stumbling across Retro Rick's channel on YouTube. I don't watch him as much as I used to, but I watch that guy loads, and the collection he has is outstanding. I then found Sick Cooper, so I watch him as well. He has another channel, Double Jump Video Games, and some of the nostalgia that was just on those channels that just fly out. It's stuff that I completely forgot about. Ninja Turtles, all the different action figures, lunchboxes, the clothes. It was just sensory overload for me, and it just gave me this massive bug. And I was like, do you know what? This is who I am. I've always been a bit of a nerd, and I don't want to say like geek or anything, but being a bit nerdy. I love my movies. I've always liked movie figures. I was the kid that was always in Forbidden Planet looking at all these different figures. I couldn't afford them, but I wasn't drawn to playing football and stuff with my friends. I like looking at these cool models and stuff like that. I used to collect Lord of the Rings memorabilia and stuff, so I've always had a collecting side, and I've always liked movies and video games. And if I see a figure or figurine of a game character, it's always taken my interest, and the cars out of movies, scale models, die-cast models. I've always had a fascination with that. For instance, before I started game collecting, and I still collect now, is NECA figures, different movies. So I've always had that, but after watching Retro Rick and Pixel Game Squad and Sick Cooper and things, it just ignited that fire. And that was the moment I was like, do you know what? I'm going to start getting some more games. I'm going to start collecting some Nintendo and some Sega games and some PlayStation games. And that is where it led me. And at the moment, I've got rid of every console now. All of my Nintendos and Segas. If I want to play them, I'll just emulate them. I'm just a PlayStation guy now. But I think at the moment, I'm sat on around 1,000 games, maybe 1,200, I don't know. But it's kind of got to a stage now where the collection is getting a bit obsessive. But yeah, that is the moment I knew I wanted to collect, was when I watched Retro Rick and he opened the door and into his room and did a room tour. I was just blown away, and I was like, I want me some of that. So thank you for having me on the channel, Joe. Sorry it's not an interesting story, but it is what it is. Everyone knows me. If you watch my channel, I'm myself, and I just speak the truth, so I'm not going to exaggerate anything. But yeah, thanks for having me on, and can't wait to hear everyone else's stories.
Hi everyone, Pixel Paul here, and a big thank you to Jo for inviting me onto this collaboration video for her channel, Super Smash Gaming YT. I've been on a collaboration video for her channel before and been asked back, and yeah, really appreciate it. So make sure you drop Jo a subscription onto her channel, and congratulations to you too for hitting that 1k subscribers as well recently, so good job. So the question of the day is, what got you into collecting, or what made you know that collecting games was for you? So for me, I've always been collecting games for, since back in sort of like 1992 when I got my first Game Boy. So I was collecting games then. And then around just about 10 years ago, I had to sell a lot of my original collection off. I still had some of that collection left in a suitcase, but the vast majority of that collection was sold. And for a few years, sort of retro gaming kind of took a bit of a back seat. I was very much concentrating on the current gens and that sort of thing. And then I think just completely randomly, one day I decided to pick up a PlayStation Portable. So I got this off, I think it was Facebook Marketplace, got it quite cheap, just because I fancied getting one again. I'd not had one for a while. It was never a console I'd massively played, but I just fancied getting one. And it was from there that I kind of thought, do you know what, I quite like this, getting the older games again, because I managed to pick up a stack of PSP games along with it, and they were dead cheap. So I suddenly started to get the games out that I had left, and they ended up in one of these sort of Kallax units from IKEA in our bedroom upstairs. And I just gradually started to pick up a few older games, Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, PS2, just the odd few from like charity shops and that sort of thing. And then it started to grow a little bit, and I suppose I kind of re-got that energy for game collecting again. But it was probably only when, and I probably have to thank Mrs. Pixel, my wife, for it, when she suggested creating this sort of games room in what is effectively our dining room / office / playroom, as it was back then. She came up with the idea of moving me games into this room, and that kind of then allowed me to sort of build this collection, which I've then been doing for the best part of, 18 months, 2 years nearly now, and never looked back. And yeah, I can't believe how much it's actually grown within that period. But yeah, just that move from getting that PlayStation Portable, picking up 1 or 2 games from charity shops and other places quite cheap, just really got me back into the groove of buying games and collecting games and just playing older games again, and sort of revisiting games that I used to have and getting games that I'd not had chance to play as well. And yeah, just having the room to put them in and somewhere to put them has re-sparked my enthusiasm and love for game collecting. So that's how I really got started again. So yeah, hope you enjoyed that, and thanks for watching.
Hello, I'm Soup of Super Pants Gaming. I just want to take a quick second to say thank you so much for having me here on this collaboration. It really means the world to me. And when I was asked the question, when was the moment that I knew I wanted to collect video games and retro consoles, it's such a tough question for me to answer, to be honest. So I'm going to attempt to do that in the next 3 minutes and probably fail. But looking back to when I was a kid, I always kind of wanted to collect video games as a kid, but I never really had the means to do it, or the money, basically. So I grew up sort of during the 8-bit and 16-bit era, sort of the golden era of gaming, if you like, and that was amazing. But the games back then, they were sort of £30-40 generally, and that may not seem like a lot of money sort of now, but 30 years ago, that was, especially to a kid, that was a lot of money. So what I used to do is I'd have a couple of games, and I was lucky that I grew up in a town with an amazing market, and I used to sort of go into town and trade a couple of games every couple of weeks, more or less, add a bit of pocket money and come back with a couple of games. I'd then hopefully complete those games, or decide I didn't like those games in the next sort of week or two, and then I'd do the same again and sort of repeat, and I'd just sort of go around in loops doing that. there were a few games back then that I kept, and games that meant something to me that were bought for me sort of by family members or whatever, sort of birthdays and Christmases sort of thing. But for the most part, I didn't really have a huge collection as a kid, but I got through so many games, and that was awesome. You know, I got to play a lot of games that I probably couldn't afford now. So moving on from there into the sort of PS1, PS2 sort of era, I had a sort of mixed relationship with gaming. I'd quite often buy the console, buy a dozen games, and then 6 months later think, nah, that's just sat collecting dust, and sell it. And I probably did that half a dozen times through the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 era. Until we get to roughly 2007, I think it was, when Assassin's Creed came out on the Xbox 360, and I just saw it, and it was like I was in that sort of point of life where I had a little bit more money, sort of thing. I had a better job, and I was like, yeah, I used to enjoy gaming. Let's get back into that sort of thing. And I went, I think it was in Comet, and I went and bought it it was the original like sort of launch model of the 360, which red ringed on me a couple of years later, as I think most of them did. And yeah, from there I started to amass more games, and I kept the same sort of thing where I'd trade a couple of games in to get new games, and then I was getting to the point where a year later I was maybe buying the game back that I traded in, and I started to think to myself, I don't really need to trade the games anymore, so why don't I just keep them, and then I don't have to worry about buying them back. And I kind of did that, and I'd say, to answer the question, roughly 2012 was probably when I probably sort of started looking back and thinking, I could buy PS2 games, I can buy the Master System games. I grew up with the Master System, amazing console. And yeah, I can buy all the games that I've ever wanted, and I think that's where I sort of decided to start collecting. So I went from there. I was going to full set the PlayStation 2 and the Master System. I decided that in 2014 or 2015, and I kind of burnt out at the end of 2017, and I sold a large majority of my collection, to be honest. And it's in 2018, 2019, I was in a sort of good position, having sold a lot of the PlayStation 2 stuff. A lot of it was worth quite a lot of money, to be honest. And I then said, oh, well, there's games on the PlayStation 3 and the N64 that I'd really love to play. And I think it just kind of went from there. So to answer the question without waffling any further, I would say roughly 2012 was when I properly started collecting video games. And I've been a little bit fickle with it since, but I think that's probably my answer. So thank you so much for having me here. I'll see you again.
Hey folks, Tech Tucker here, and thanks to Super Smash Gaming for inviting me to this collaboration video. So yes, the topic being, when did I, start to figure out when I was wanting to collect video games. As you can see, plenty of games here, 360, Switch, PS5, like, I don't discriminate. I love all forms of gaming, modern gaming, retro, you name it, I love it. So yes, in terms of when, it's kind of always been like something I've done. So not necessarily video games right away, but I think playing Pokemon growing up and that, I've always had the catch 'em all mentality, if you will. So yeah, that's kind of where it originated. I think I blame Pokemon. But yeah, gaming's always been a thing in my family. Like, my dad doesn't game or anything like that, but my mum's always liked video games and such. Like, she has a Nintendo Switch that me and my brother bought her for Mother's Day. Went halfers on that one day. She genuinely thought we'd bought her a box of socks or something. Yeah, so but yeah, I digress. So in terms of that, like, she had like a Game Boy that she would, when my oldest brother, he'd sit in her lap and she'd play Tetris and he'd watch. And then there was the Super Nintendo, the Sega Master System, which were hand-me-downs. I played those. Me and my older brother, he had an N64 growing up, so I played a lot of that. So I've always played things like Pokemon games, Pokemon Stadium, Mario 64. I had like the likes of Toy Story 2 and such. So as the years go by, obviously my mum would not let me trade in games at all. I would be like, this game sucks. I remember Crash of the Titans specifically. I did not like that game. It was on the Nintendo DS. I wanted to try and get some other games. My mum firmly said no. So I ended up collecting games like not on purpose, but over time I ended up just amassing a pile of games. Like Nintendo DS was like the first console I owned for myself, because my mom would just buy me games for my brother's systems and that. And as a child, I would get angry and throw controllers and break them, so that is the reason that my mum wouldn't buy me my own console for so long. That, and my brother already had it, so I was like, I could play them anyways. So at that point, I had a lot of Nintendo DS games. I had some GameCube games. I was definitely a big Nintendo fan then. These days, I still love Nintendo, but Nintendo games will always probably be my favourite. But I've definitely broadened my horizons a lot more, like genres rather than just like platformers and Pokemon. I like a lot of first-person shooters. I like FPS games; they're fun. I'm trying to think what else. I do like the odd RPG, the odd JRPG as well, but they're just so time-consuming, so I don't play a lot of them. But I do enjoy them. Yeah, third-person action games I'm a big fan of, like the likes of Bayonetta, Devil May Cry. So those sorts of genres I started opening up to it, because I did get an Xbox 360 when I turned. It was like when I was 13. Like it was my 13th Christmas. So I was going before that though. I was going to like car boot sales and such. My dad owned a caravan at Berwick-upon-Tweed, still does, and I discovered the magical world of car boot sales there. And at that point, that's when I was like, oh, I can be like Wheeler Dealers. Bargain Hunt, Storage Wars. I watched those shows on TV all the time on the History Channel and such. So, at car boot sales, there was always PlayStation 2, so I ended up amassing a fair PlayStation 2 collection, which I did end up trading to my brother and selling off, over time, because I sold, most of my games to buy Amiibo for Smash Bros. Wii U when that came out, so that was in, 2014, so I'm trying to think. I think it probably between the ages of 10 and 12 is when I started, collecting, video games, officially, because I can't remember when Game Chasers came out, but it was literally when Game Chasers came out. I basically was this isn't just me boasting, right? It is literally, I've been watching Game Chasers since day one. The likes of AVGN. I've not been watching AVGN since day one, but I remember my older brother and older sister would sit in the computer and watch AVGN, and they'd always go away, you can't watch this. And when I discovered it myself, I loved it, and just seeing all those different games, all those older type games, all the crappy games, Game Chasers and AVGN is what made me oh, there's, I can do this, I remember on my Sony Ericsson slider phone with a keyboard, I remember I went to a car boot sale and awkwardly recorded myself when I was 12 years old. I deleted the video, unfortunately, otherwise I'd show you guys. It's pretty funny, but I found a platinum copy of Crash Bandicoot on the PS1 for 70p, because I literally had pennies, so that's all I had. So yes, so it was never one specific console I collected for. Over time, with Mega Drive, you'd think I'd been playing that since a kid. Actually, no. I always thought Mega Drive was garbage, growing up, because I'd always get those shitty compilations, and it had Golden Axe, which is a good game to be fair, but Altered Beast, the Alex Kidd and the Enchanted Castle, I think it's called, in the Mega Drive, which I did not like those games. I saw them as inferior versions, Master System ones, and yeah, that's just what I associated Mega Drive with, just those garbage games. And then I'll probably offend someone with that opinion, but I also don't care. And Sonic and such, but I could play those in compilations, so I just never collected, and I discovered all these other games that aren't on other platforms and such, and that's when I was yes, I love Mega Drive, for example. So to begin with, probably around when I was 10, 12 years old, I'm going to be 26 in a few weeks, so I've been collecting games more than half my life. It's been a huge part of my life for ages. I've always been, going to car boot sales, flipping stuff. CEX wasn't really a thing at that point, so it was literally Granger Games at that time I'd usually go and trade stuff into. Granger Games, and I'd sometimes beg my mom to list things on eBay for me and to get more money to go to car boot sales and buy Sonic toys and Pokemon toys, because I was more into merchant stuff back in the day. So it was mostly that's what I went for, but nowadays it's completely video games, because you can play them, you get a lot more value out of them. So these days, I'm definitely more firm in what consoles I like to collect for. Nintendo, love Nintendo in general. I'll buy anything Nintendo, really. Except, although I've stopped buying shovelware and stuff, it literally is games I find interesting just because space is at a premium. I do love original Xbox is where I go for multi-platforms, because GameCube's just too expensive. I don't like collecting for PS2 because I'm not a huge fan of the controller. The cases look awful when you display them sideways, so I don't like collecting them for that reason. And yes, and then Xbox 360, but anything post 360, and PlayStation 4/5 now. Yeah, Xbox One, I really did like at the time, and I didn't buy a whole lot of games, you know, in that era. It was mainly Switch that I was buying for, because that's when I got my first full-time job. I started buying Switch games because I just got my Switch, and yes, I'm trying to think if there's anything else, but yeah, these days don't collect Xbox like at all. It literally is 360 I go for, because that I grew up, that was like my main console as a teenager, so it has a lot of sentimental meaning to me. That has just got so many awesome games. And I know I've been talking for absolute ages, so I apologise for taking up a huge slot in this video. But again, thanks for having me on this video, Joe, and congrats on 1,000 subscribers. Here's to you. And here's to the next 1,000, and eventually 10,000, and yeah, you're smashing it, keep it up.
So that was asking video game YouTubers when and why you started collecting video games. Thank you to everybody that took part. Again, let me know your story down in the comments of when you started collecting video games and why, because I would love to hear that. If you enjoyed this week's video, please give it a big thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing, as it really helps me out and it really helps the channel out. And also go and subscribe to all these guys, because these guys are absolutely amazing and they have their own YouTube channels as well, obviously. And like I said, they are amazing and you definitely should go and subscribe to each and every one of them. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!